Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's so nice to sit together. Um, I was struck this morning, I woke up and kind of immediately started rushing. My mind was, projecting into the day, all the activities that needed to happen, and immediately with those thoughts, feelings arise, resentments about things, that I have to do or don't have to do, or, just the worries of the day. And then we sat and I went, oh, right here, right now. Um, and it's, to just simply pay attention to our moment, with all of our senses to what's arising in this moment. And, right here and right now is such a radical activity to do. And to do it together, to kind of go to the gym, if you will, with one another and work out our mindfulness muscle. I think it's particularly an activity we need to engage in these times where there's so many things that can pull us in so many directions. So to keep that muscle strong, I think is an important activity. And I appreciate you all coming together online and in that very full Zendo in New York City, holy cow, and in New Paltz online and in our physical Zendo. I came down the hill to ensure better connectivity. And I was worried at the beginning that maybe it didn't work out for me and that I should run back up to the Zendo proper, but we're all connected. Here we are. So for those of you who I haven't met, and there's quite a few new faces to me, my name is Jo An, and I'm one of the teachers with the Village Zendo, and I lead a small group here in New Paltz, north of the city. Today, uh, it feels somewhat balmy here, comparatively in the Hudson River Valley. The past couple of weeks have just been bitterly, bitterly cold. And to the point that we had to cancel the Zendo on 2 Sundays, our in-person sitting here. And this past Wednesday, I was just hell-bent. I said, we're gonna sit. So I sent out an email, saying all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, crampons on your shoes. If you feel safe, come. I will open the Zendo and we can sit together. And Concho, in an effort to arrive early and get everything set up, slid his car right into the woods. And so we had to extricate him. He's fine. His car is fine. Everything's okay. But we have still a bit of a luge run from the Zendo down to the house. So a little better this morning, having taken the ashes from our fireplace that's cooking away there and spreading that on the ice. It helped a bit, but it's quite thick and quite slick. And I was really just struck mostly by, kind of the difference in the way, if I can make the reference to our core text, our study text early in the talk, the difference in the way the ingredients presented themselves. It's all the same. It's the same driveway, the same trees, the same gravel, you know, um, but we added some water and increased the temperature. And so instead of our history of cars being stuck at the New Paltz Sun Center, in the spring they get stuck in the mud. In the winter they get stuck in the bushes from sliding off the road. Same ingredients, just a different preparation of them, if you will. And I want to express some gratitude to Ryoshin this morning, who manages our Dharma talks and does it, without too much fanfare, and somehow is able to pull it all together and gather the teachers and the senior students and organize, these talks that are done online and in person. It's a lot of work. And you would think that after, a few years of signing up for these talks, I would recognize that signing up close to Shuso Hosen is a bad idea. You should get out in front of it and give one of the early talks, because so many offerings have been given on our core texts that have been so delicious. They've worked with this text, all of our teachers, and offered us such great stuff. What could I possibly have to offer in addition? And it worries me for you, Ryugen, although I'm quite sure you've been leading us so skillfully so far in this Ango period that you will have a delicious meal to present to all of us when the day comes. So that said, recently, my husband and I, Scott, decided to get rid of our overpriced cable and internet package that we didn't really utilize much of, but bought at the time. And so we've entered the streaming world. And so if those of you who know me well enough to know my fear of all things technological, this was an ingredient that I want. How does it work? It's on my phone. I don't understand it. But I've adapted, and in our streaming service, have discovered these shows that I had forgotten about. There's an entire channel dedicated to Iron Chef, the Japanese version, the original version, not the American version. And it's just episodes of Iron Chef nonstop. And it's particularly sweet for me because when Scott and I met a little over 20 years ago, this was like one of our first date activities. We would watch this on my small TV, and it was just a joy. And so finding it again has been great. And if you're unfamiliar with this show, The Iron Chef, it was made, I think, late 80s, early 90s in Japan, and it is the campiest spectacle ever. It's just that period of time. It's the premise is there's a chairman who has sort of gathered this harem of iron chefs that are French cuisine, Italian cuisine, Chinese cuisine, and Japanese cuisine. And they're in his cavalry of chefs. And then he pulls in an outside chef from maybe another country, maybe from Japan, who works in some sort of style, and he's there to battle the iron chefs. And there's dry ice, and they rise out of the ground on hydraulic lifts in these like silky, golden colored costume things. And the chairman has a bad perm and is like Liberace and a Matador's love child, in terms of costuming. And then there's a panel of judges that are baseball players and actresses, and the voiceover is just comical. The men are very manly and the women are very soft spoken, and it's just culturally hysterical. But there's this great cooking show that also is happening in it. So at the final thing is that he chooses a chef to battle, and they reveal the one ingredient that they have to work with. Many of you, I've given a talk before about Chopped, the television show, cooking show Chopped. So what's different here is there's only one ingredient, and this one ingredient has to be carried throughout multiple dishes. And the chairman pulls back the sheet and reveals the ingredient. And often, it's an ingredient that's difficult to work with. Occasionally, a turnip, a potato, something daikon, something that is not too extreme. But more often than not, it's something alive, and it has to be battled with and wrestled with and potentially killed to be utilized in the cuisine. So I've always loved cooking shows, but this one is unique unto itself in its presentation of ingredients that are really trying, and how do we meet these trying ingredients and transform them and make them palatable and able to work with them when they're uninvited. Do we brine it? Do we pound it thin? Do we mince it up? How do we work with these ingredients? So interestingly, I am studying for a master's degree in science nursing education. And I'm currently taking a course on syllabus development. And this week's agenda was to work with data gathering and contextual analysis. So it's really all about, is the syllabus that's being taught reflecting the values of the department, of the institution, of the community, of the world? Are they reflecting those values? And so I'm working on, and this is happening simultaneously while we're watching, the funding for research, drug trials disappear. Clinics that serve trans youth in New York City in the state we live in which I thought was somewhat untouchable, but secondary to federal funding, organizations deciding to close or to stop services in an effort to keep their doors open. So I work at an institution that has a very strong Catholic background, but it is a private institution at this time, but it has federal funding. It receives federal funding. We have a DEI department, and of course, our clinic and social services, our counseling services, all have funding that are tied into them. So there's a heightened awareness, that's happening. And, we've gotten a sort of messaging from our administration that they're in a wait and see sort of pattern. And I bristled, this wait and see made me kind of go, what does that mean? This wait and see. And these teaching plans that I'm coming up with are for, I'm proposing is a teaching plan for inclusive healthcare for trans and non-binary students to be taught in a nursing program. And the other is teaching mindfulness to clinicians who, face great trauma, and bear witness to profound trauma, and to offer mindfulness exercises for them to combat some of that. And I recognize now that these are probably syllabi that are not welcomed by many. They're not eagerly brought into the greater course structure, even in the most liberal of institutions. And I think they're at risk now for disappearing altogether, and I'm very frightened by this prospect. It's an ingredient that I'm not excited to work with. And when I heard this sort of wait and see attitude, I immediately, having had a little background in leadership now in this program, went, oh, I see what they're doing. I understand where it comes from, this idea of let's let larger institutions fight our fight. Maybe we're going to be okay. We'll potentially dodge a bullet. We'll move some things around. We'll restructure things. We won't call that a committee. We'll call it a club, so that it's very clear that none of the funding for the Queer Trans Committee comes from, the school, that this is a club. So these are things that are already happening that make me bristle. And things that were under DEI that get moved under student affairs, and just the clever maneuvering of things, which of course I don't want to see programs disappear. But when do you stand your ground and say, no, absolutely not? Like, I'm not going to pander to this. It's very important that we call it what it is, and remain to call it what it is. So, I can't help but think of people who waited to see, in genocidal situations throughout history, who said, I think that I can stand back because I'm not in the limelight here. I should be okay. I'm going to wait a little bit. And by no means do I want to make that sound like I'm placing blame on the victim of a genocide by waiting. I myself think of this, and what about the means to leave? If you just don't have it, the means to protect yourself, how horrific to see others be able to and not to be able to protect yourself, your family, your loved ones. And I think of the people today who are willing, when they don't have those means, to travel great distances by foot with their families to try to come and find a better meal, a better, better ingredients to work with, so that they can serve themselves and others, and to be met with potentially not welcoming arms. So an ingredient that is pronounced in my life right now, working in college health, is working with students who express concern for their loved ones who are undocumented and may be taken away. And what are they going to do? How will they deal with that? I think of our students who are on student visas from countries that may quickly be seen as not desirable to have people here. And will they be taken away? Will they be told they can no longer study in the school? I think of our trans students who come into our clinic, and while we offer some trans affirm, gender affirming care within our clinic, we have to actually usually refer them out to receive medications, and we often use Planned Parenthood, and they've expressed concern that they're not going to be able to get their medications and continue their gender affirming care. And then it really makes me wonder, we had a meeting with the Queer Trans Committee and Fox Pride, the student group that I am on. The committee is no longer a committee now, we're now a club. We had a meeting with them, and I thought I would find kindred spirits, people in in this group that said, yes, I too am horrified by how our president hasn't really come forward with a bold statement like they did at Wesleyan University or another university, that they haven't come forward and said, we'll stand our ground regardless of what happens. But while there are some people who sort of sided with me, overwhelmingly, the group was sort of like, no, I think our administration is taking the right tactic here. Temper your eagerness to protest and sort of, there is actions being taken. They're being taken very cautiously and very quietly, but I feel that the administration has our back. And I've come to see that that is the case, very likely. And I come from a 1980s ACT UP tactic of protest, which is a little bit punch first, ask questions later. And so, I recognize that maybe that is not the most skillful way to work with this ingredient at this time. It may be soon to come that we need to be very loud. But right now, in my current situation at work, we need to sort of wait and see. But I worry about that. I worry about what wait and see looks like. So thinking about that waiting and seeing makes me think about vows I have taken, and not my Buddhist vows, my Nightingale pledge. When I became a nurse, I took that pledge. There's a lot of organizations I belong to, the American College Health Association, the American Nursing Association, all that have code of ethics and pledges. Maybe they don't look like our precepts, but they, routinely over and over again ask me, to treat all beings with dignity and respect, with cultural humility and with compassion. And what if the institution I work for capitulates to the federal mandates that are in direct opposition of my duties as a nurse and as a nurse educator? And can I continue to work for an institution that doesn't support my efforts to make culturally humble clinicians? I'm not sure I can. But taking this outside of the nursing realm, and back maybe into our Buddhist precepts, we don't need to be faced with the moral and ethical dilemmas of a healthcare program and a college institution worried about what it can and cannot teach, how it takes the ingredients to try to make them palatable. We can see it for ourselves. We can see it for our loved ones, for our own communities. This is happening in our own neighborhoods, in our own homes, and we see it. Shinryu Roshi, sent out a postcard at the beginning of our Ango asking us, how do we prepare the supreme meal? And this was echoed by our Shuso Ryugen in his letter. And, how do we work with ingredients that seem enormous, that wrap their tentacles around us when we're reaching for them, that snap at us, and try to pinch our fingers off? How do we work with ingredients like that? How do you work with, the pufferfish, the blowfish, that if it's not prepared properly is poisonous? It will kill you if it's not prepared properly. How do you work with ingredients like that? So Dogen reminds us in the instructions to the cook to put high things in high places and to put low things in low places. But, our practice, positions shift all the time. Fugan and I had, when we ordained that summer, were the Tenzos for the entire Ango period. He was head Tenzo and I was his assistant, thank goodness, or no one would have received any food at all. You know, every day we would organize the kitchen and put things that belonged in high places and high places and things that belonged in low places and low places. And then Samu would happen and people would clean up and we would come in and everything would be in new places because there were 5 new Tenzos in the kitchen taking, you know, control of that object, thinking this is the right place for it. This is where it goes. And we would put, you know, labels with magic, you know, marker on things, you know, spoons, knives, teacups, big platters. But, you know, after a few washings, the magic marker disappeared. The labels became meaningless. You know, things found new homes, places shifted and changed, you know, and we so desperately want things to not change. We so desperately want things to be fixed. Flip, one of our Village Zendo Mahasanga poets, offered a poem recently encouraging us and welcoming us to the upcoming urban session. And the offerings at this urban session sound particularly rich. I very much wish I could be in the city to participate, but I think there's also an online option, maybe at the end. You don't get to participate live, but you get all the prompts, I think. So something to consider if you can't attend in person. But Flip offered us a welcoming poem, and I'm only taking a small verse of it, so my apologies for not reading it in its totality. But there was a section that really struck me. And he said, sentient beings are slumberless, hungering for a lullaby and a dream and a wake up beyond spleen and calm on the one of this here-ness without harness. I shall read this portion again. Sentient beings are slumberous, hungering for a lullaby and a dream and a wake up beyond spleen and calm on the one of this here-ness without harness. When we love to have ingredients of our dreams, the sweet cream of lullabies and the rich, smooth texture of our delusions, we often chase these ingredients. I chase them, I think. I'm constantly looking for, you know, the smooth and the creamy. But as Flip shared so eloquently, it is in the here-ness without harness that our storehouse is, you know, our pantry, our refrigerator, our cabinets. That's where we will find our ingredients. So there's no dream to spice up the recipe. There's no cheese you can melt on top of it to mask the flavor of the present moment. It is what it is. And practicing our lives as they are is what we're here to do, is what zazen is about. It's not about transcending something, becoming something other than what we actually are. And in New Paltz, and my apologies, I may, because you used this word today, and I mean no offense, but the New Paltz Sangha knows I get very upset when anyone refers to Kinhin as a break, or that period of time between zazen as a break. And I will say, we don't sit to get good at sitting. We sit to stand up. We sit to engage. We sit to encounter the ordinariness of our life. We sit in the ordinary so we can be ordinary and practice miraculous ordinariness. And to see what this moment is offering us, what the ingredients are at our disposal, and consider ones we may not routinely see in our busyness, you know, that we have to slow down to pay attention to. Oh, I have ash in the fireplace. I could use that to put on the ice in the driveway. That would help make it a little less slippery, to slow down and pay attention. So my pantry currently feels very full of spicy, hot, pungent, aromatic, fiery foods, because it seems like that's what I'm receiving day after day after day. So perhaps for the next 4 years, I shall be cooking up spicy, fiery, hot dishes to offer in response to the ingredients I'm receiving. It seems that that would be merited to do that. And Gesho offered us a way to work with these difficult ingredients in her last talk. I was so moved by her talk, and I didn't write down the artist's name. It's Meryl, and I can't remember the last two names, but she offered us her manifesto on maintenance art and how we can perceive our lives, the ordinariness of our lives, as maintenance, as maintaining, and it's a profound artistic act to just wake up and live our lives day after day, and make a spicy meal when we have to, if that feels like an appropriate response. So I'm going to leave you with a koan from the Householders book of koans that was written by Gyoko Roshi and Eve Marco Roshi. And it's called Kit's New Practice. It's a beautiful koan that I sort of stumbled upon, so I will share it with you. Where on the compass do you find being human? North, south, east, west? Look up, look down, or just Google. The commentary of this koan describes a interaction between a Zen student, maybe one of the two authors, and a child. And the child is crawling on the ground and barking. And the teacher or the student asks, what are you doing? And the child says, I'm pretending. And so playing along, said, oh, are you pretending to be a cat? I said, oh, no, silly, I'm pretending to be a dog. He asks, well, how do you do that? And the child goes, ruff, ruff. So, I think we have these well-worn identities and old recipes that we think we can rely on. It's always going to be Taco Tuesday and Casserole Wednesday. We have these ideas of, how we will work with the ingredients of our lives, and that we can rely on old recipes. But taking this child's teaching to heart, this student that woke up the next day and said, today, I'm going to pretend to be human all day. I'm going to pretend to be a human being for the length of this day. So they took a shower like a human would, and then they made coffee like a human, said hello to their partner like a human, walked their dog like a human would. So our cells are coming into being and disappearing moment after moment after moment. The person you were at the beginning of this talk and the person you are right now are two entirely different things. The breath that just left your body, is gone. You will never have that breath again. How can we do anything other than pretend to be human? So can we pretend to be iron chefs? Can we pretend to be the Tenzo of our own monastery? And when the ingredients seem too cumbersome to work with, or too toxic, or too threatening, that they require our attention too much, too many pots, and too many burners, but we just check the temperature, season appropriately, and carefully attend to them moment after moment after moment. So I will leave you with a gatha recipe that I've written to maybe work with the ingredients we have in these coming times. Begin with the moment, fresh and unseasoned, present before you. Add a pinch of patience, letting your mind and body come into harmony with what is. When that is firmed a bit, stir in the breath, filling your senses with the richness of now. Then, gently fold in attention to the unfolding of this moment. Add intention, focused and clear, without expectation, and serve.